and there was about 55,000 interviews that said that people were, funnily enough, happy with their aged care experience, except for food and dining and loneliness.
And I'd imagine that getting nutrition right would have other benefits to quality of life.
If you get nutrition right, you have better skin quality. You're happy, you sleep better because you're well nourished, you're not hungry. Therefore, you're going to have reduced hospitalisations.
What I find really difficult at the moment is that there's no avenue for an innovative provider to say, look, I have this great idea about improving the quality of the life of my residents, and here is how I need the right personnel to spend that funds.
We tend in the industry typically to have treated aged care dining as a mandatory cafeteria experience. I don't want to eat in a cafeteria every day, and I don't want every one of my meals to be a cafeteria experience.
What I'm not seeing is a huge change. You know, I see a lot of onus and pressure on providers, but I'm not seeing providers necessarily rewarded by the department for doing some of these innovations.
It can't just be, what am I going to whip up this morning for the residents? It is about understanding everything about the person.
Welcome to Time Well Spent, the podcast for decision makers, providers, and everyone working to make a difference in care. I'm Dane Mitchell, joined by my co-host, Rose Plater.
Together, we bring 31 years of combined experience and still counting, and a shared passion for reimagining aged care and community health. From policy and reform to leadership, culture, and connection, this is where we explore new ideas, hear what leaders really think, and uncover what it takes to create environments where time is truly well spent.
Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Time Well Spent. I'm Dane Mitchell.
And I'm Rose Plater. We started this podcast because, like many of you listening, we care deeply about the future of aged care, NDIS, and the wider health sector. These are industries that touch all of our lives, and they're at a crossroads.
Too often the conversations about reform, funding, and service delivery happen behind closed doors or get reduced to headlines. With Time Well Spent, we wanted to create a space for authentic, unfiltered dialogue with the people shaping the sector. The leaders, thinkers and doers who aren't afraid to share bold ideas.
We believe that every stage of life should be just that, time well spent. And to achieve that, we need to talk openly about what's working, what isn't, and what needs to change.
For our first episode, we sit down with Nick Ryan, CEO of Lutheran Services and former regulator, to explore one of the biggest challenges in aged care, malnutrition.
Nick shares how Lutheran Services tackles malnutrition head-on by reimagining the dining experience, turning mealtimes into moments of connection, dignity and joy. It's not just about the food on the plate, it's about the design, the environment and all the five senses.
It's a story about what happens when providers stop focusing on compliance alone and start asking, what would make this person's day truly better?
We're so glad you're joining us on this journey. Let's get into episode 1 of Time Well Spent with Nick Ryan.
It's no secret that as we age, our bodies struggle to keep up with nutritional needs. What may surprise you is that more older Australians are becoming malnourished as they enter a nursing home. A Monash University study found that almost 40% of residents in nursing homes in Australia are malnourished. Today we're joined by Nick Ryan, the CEO of Lutheran Services, to unpack why this problem persists and what can be done to change it. Welcome to Time Well Spent with Dane and Rose, a podcast series created to have meaningful, authentic conversations about the Australian care sector.
So we've got Nick Ryan coming in today. Nick's the CEO of Lutheran Services.
Do you know Nick?
I might know him a little bit. I've worked with Nick in the past, back when I was at Lutheran Services. He's come through a variety of different careers. He has been both the regulator and the regulatee. He's been the chair of Meaningful Ageing. He's been a founder of the Lantern Project. He has done a lot of things. He's had a lot of different experiences and look forward to hearing about some of them today.
Geez, you've pumped him up. I hope it's a good interview.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll impress.
Welcome, Nick.
Thank you, Dane.
It's great to have you.
It's very good to be here.
We'd love to start talking about Happy Table.
Well, Happy Table is close to my heart, and I think I should probably go back about 10 years. So 10 years ago, I had started as the CEO of the Aged Care Quality Agency, which is now the Aged Care Quality and Safety Commission the Commission's got a few more functions than I had. And I remember meeting with the Australian Dietitians Association. And of course, in those days, lots of industry groups would come and meet the regulator. So, I would have weekly or fortnightly meetings with Allied Health or, the Pharmacy Guild. So you get lots and lots of meetings. And so you always welcome people. There's a chance to say hello to people, hear what their piece of the world looks like. And the representative from the ADA said that more than 50% of aged care residents were clinically malnourished. Now, in a job like that, you've got to have a poker face. So I'm sitting there nodding, thank you, taking notes, and inside I'm going, that can't be right. That can't be right. And it's not unusual for an organisation to kind of talk up the need for that organisation. That was part of my thinking. So I began to watch the data. So I looked at the accreditation data from across Australia. I was looking at a whole range of different data sets and I began to realise that it was right. Later, I followed the work of Dr. Sri Hugo, who is with the Lantern Project, who is a Gold Coast-based aged care dietitian, and it was her approach that we adopted with Happy Table. But before I talk about the approach, let's go back to not so much Happy Table, but food and dining and quality of life. Because one of the things that we've got to really focus on in aged care is the risk to start with specialisation and clinicalisation. So I could meet you and I could perceive you as being a cluster of clinical indicators. And of course, if my status as an aged care provider is I'm good at providing clinical interventions. So you kind of frame everything around what you do. And in fact, the fundamental thing about residential aged care, any human service, is not that a person is fundamentally a resident or has a file in Telstra Health or whatever. So people are fundamentally people, and the whole idea about getting older is to live long enough to perhaps one day need that kind of intervention. So for me, food and dining first starts with about individuals and quality of life. And it does include a deep concern around clinical malnutrition, some of which is medical and some of which is about built environment. Some of it is about the menu, the way it's cooked, the way it's served, et cetera, but it first and foremost starts with this is a person who, like the three of us today, have 4 or 5 or 6 times a day consume things. And we know that aged care, the research that we did in the Quality Agency, the consumer experience reports, and there was about 55,000 interviews, that said that people were, funnily enough, happy with their aged care experience, except for food and dining and loneliness.
And what weren't they happy with? What was it about that?
Well, they just rated it lower than they did around, do I have a voice in my care? Am I respected? Et cetera.
Gotcha.
So, on average, across these 10 plus 2 questions, 10 specific questions and 2 open-ended questions, across the 10 standardised questions, they were scoring in the mid-80% as an average. Wow. Now, if you've got 50,000+ interviews across about 200,000 residents, statistically the sample is rock solid. So there's no statistical issue about it.
We won't get you stuck on maths because we know you're a good mathematician.
That's right.
Enthusiastic.
Right. Yes, I'm an
enthusiastic qualified mathematician, are you not?
Anyway, so effectively then, what I really began 10 years ago to become focused on food, because it's what we all do, especially people in nursing homes, multiple times a day. And quality of life is closely linked to quality of food. And quality of life is where food is part of a dining experience, not reduced to a series of, how many grams of carbs and protein. So It's to rehumanise and take a whole of person perspective around how do we eat, how do we dine together as the basis for good life. So Happy Table for us was always about how do we take whole food, how do we take a whole of day and a whole of dining experience approach. The underlying concern is an unacceptably high rate of malnutrition across the industry, including Lutheran Services homes, completely unacceptably high.
Has that changed, or is it still the case in the industry?
Dane, good question. I haven't seen recent industry data, but for us it has changed.
Okay.
So when we first went down the path, we had a clinical rate of 42%, and we've reduced it now to under 10%.
Congratulations,
Brilliant.
That's huge.
That is brilliant.
Which is under the M&A, which is the gold standard.
And Nick, how much of that is really about the inputs in terms of protein and fats versus the experience and nurturing the experience of people at the table in your
That's a
thoughts?
yes to both.
Yes to both?
There's got to be rigour in the methodology. So it can't just be, what am I going to whip up this morning for the residents? We always start with a dietetical assessment. So it is important that we do have a clinical benchmark. And it's not just around weighing people. It's not just monitoring for unexplained weight loss or rapid weight loss, which of course we need to do clinically anyway. It is about understanding everything about the person. For example, can they swallow? Do they have poorly fitted dentures? That's a related issue about oral health and aged care. Are they able to see the food? Are they able to see the food on the plate? So if a resident has dementia, often the food will, or their vision, if it's on bright white, cutlery, will swim. So they find it hard to actually visually interact with the plate. So it really breaks down food and dining into its components. Some of those are clinical. Some of those are about food choices, around co-design of menus, about how and where they're served up or plated, for those who watch cooking shows, and I'm not one of them, how it's plated, et cetera, and it's not just the dining experience, it's a 5 sense experience. So why is it that we tend in the industry typically to have treated aged care dining as a mandatory cafeteria experience? So I don't mind going to a cafeteria occasionally because it might meet the need. I don't want to eat in a cafeteria every day, and I don't want every one of my meals to be a cafeteria experience.
Should feel like home.
It should feel like home. And Dane, let's say you're at home and you're on your own, you'll stir fry some veggies, maybe add some chicken. I call that a nutritional experience. But Rose, you've got your whole extended family over and it's someone's birthday. I call that a dining experience. Mm-hmm. So it's the difference between, it does look at the components of eating, swallowing, dysphagia, all of those things. It does pick up on proteins and carbs and the inputs, but it sees it fundamentally as a human experience where people eat and eat together, where that's appropriate and where that's what people wish, in a way that adds to quality of life. And fundamentally, if you do that well, clinical malnutrition drops. Also, there's a focus, and we're fairly specific about this, is we prefer whole food, fresh cooked. So we are cautious about supplements where you get the very expensive milkshakes. Now, there is a clinical indication for those milkshakes. So I'm not saying we would never do it, but it would need to be prescribed or recommended by a dietitian or a doctor. Otherwise, the whole business of providing food and dining experiences for aged care residents is for their enjoyment, not our convenience. And so in the same way that we're very cautious now to chemically restrain people because we don't know how to work with residents with dementia. I'm also very cautious to say, well, we just want to give you a milkshake. You get the carbs and the proteins, and it's more convenient for me. So this is about resident front and centre. It's about their experience. It's around working out what works for each resident, what their physical experience, visual experience, olfactory experience of food is. And if we do it well, clinical malnutrition drops. And it's never just the dining on its own. It's screening everyone with a dietetic assessment. It's monitoring for weight loss, rapid weight loss, and persistent weight loss. It means that we are intentional and mindful about this, because if we do this well, we give people a better quality of life. And by the way, they have reduced malnutrition. And of course, malnutrition is wholly avoidable, not always avoidable, but significantly avoidable unless it's at the end. And you don't talk about malnutrition so much with palliation unless it's an immediate cause.
And I'd imagine that getting nutrition right would have other benefits to quality of life.
If you get nutrition right, you have better skin quality. You'll have, especially because as you get older, you need more protein. The basic requirement for protein goes up to almost double what it would be for a younger person. And so therefore you manage your comorbidities better. You're happy, you sleep better because you're well nourished, you're not hungry. Therefore, you're going to have reduced hospitalisations. You're going to have better quality of life. And if you have reduced hospitalisations, there's not disruption. And so this is a chain event. If someone is malnourished, they're not as happy. Their underlying medical conditions tend to worsen. They have poorer quality of life. And the fact that we have to spell it out is one of the problems we face in aged care, is we become so specialised that instead of dealing with the whole person, we have 6 different clinical or professional filters, none of which quite picks up the whole person. That said, how lucky are we and how required is it to have dietitians, speechies, nurses, OTs, et cetera, dentists and the whole thing. So I'm not saying there's no need for clinical care. What I'm saying is you take a whole of person perspective, and that's actually best practice clinical intervention.
So in terms of the weight, I guess, on all of the individual providers with more indicators, and do you think that there are some indicators that are missing and some indicators that we need to remove?
I'm still working my way through the guidance material for the new standards, so I'm not going to, it's too early to say this. I probably would speak more broadly this is a heck of a time coming. So the 1st of November is a heck of a time. It's a new act, a rights-based approach, which is absolutely mandatory. It's the way it should have always been. The clinical, the governance, the administrative, the funding overheads, the way that it's managed is change upon change. So what I expect is people, it's like sitting a test, or it's like me buying IKEA. If I buy 2 IKEA stools, right, the first one takes me an hour and involves a lot of unpleasant language. Right? But the second stool I do in half the time because I know what I'm doing. So part of a new set of standards or requirements is that they're new, and you have to, it's a bit like the way it is, but it's a bit different, which is a bit like you're going to America and you go, what's it like to drive in America? And I go, it's exactly the same as what you do now, but it's different.
Yeah.
And so therefore, I do believe that the new standards are fundamentally the same, right? They're fundamentally similar. They are a strengthened new set of standards. That's the way that they're described. But they're fundamentally based on the same principles, certainly over the last 6 years, which is the current set of standards. And certainly the new Aged Care Act, while there are more obligations, a whole range of more obligations, if you're a provider doing a good job, it will absolutely, there'll be a need to be a step up, but it's not a quantum change it's a focus and it's a requirement to evidence better standard governance, clinical care, stakeholder engagement, co-design. So I think that the new standards in the new Act are coming. I think the best way is not to run away, but to run into them, is to embrace them, to see what they're going to look like and feel like. I did go to the
In terms of, I guess, we've been through, once upon a time when I first started in aged care, there was no indicators that we reported in terms of clinical, or very few there were mandatory clinical indicators. I think I get the goodwill, I guess, and the reason why we would start, given, the Royal Commission's recommendations and given, I guess, what we were all experiencing in the industry in a stagnant, particularly, I guess, under the ACFI model around doing for, not doing with. But I think what I'm not seeing is a huge change. I see a lot of onus and pressure on providers, but I'm not seeing providers necessarily rewarded by the department for doing some of these innovations. Would you say that that's the case for Lutheran?
And just to build on that, Nick, there's a study from Monash University last year that still showed a 40% malnutrition rate.
Yeah.
So clearly, from what Rose is saying and what you've said, there's a solution. It can be done, but sounds like as an industry we're not getting it right yet.
No, and I don't think we are. I think on the questions of malnutrition, I don't think these things are easy. If they were easy, they'd be fixed, right? And I don't think a single training program or a single approach. And so methodologies that you use and to focus a project-based focus that we've adopted as a signature offering, Happy Table is a signature offering for us, it's a commitment to do a couple of things particularly well. And so Happy Table is we front-loaded a lot of money and effort where we could have done it in 50 areas across our business, but we chose that because quality of life is based around good food. Loneliness can be addressed through good eating and dining together. The clinical presentation was completely unacceptable. It's not a normative part of ageing until the very end, and that's understood quite differently at the very, very end. And so therefore, I don't think there's a magic bullet, but I do think with intentionality, with a focus, with good collaboration, a good community of practice, that there are ways forward. And I don't think we have solved it. I think we're just intentional and open about it. We are pleased to see some results, some really promising results, but we speak about it in the perfect tense, not in the past tense. And good eating and dining is about living. So it's about best quality of life.
I had a really interesting experience a few years back. I, in my day job, go around a lot of aged care facilities, and generally speaking, we've got a lot of great work done on the floor. Like, generally speaking, when you meet with personal carers and are in the space, no one's there for the money or the glamour, that they really generally are there to give a good life to their residents. But I had a really interesting experience. I walked into a dining room, and for the first time in my career, a resident asked if I'd like to sit with them. And that was huge. And I realised that's so unique that normally when I enter a dining room, and it's been a complete kind of unconscious bias I've had, I enter a dining room and I get this particular kind of look from a resident, like, what are you here doing? What have I done wrong? Or what do I need to tell you? Yep. Or am I, do I feel embarrassed? Yes. Am I comfortable? But I thought in this dining room, the coupling of the residents' meal, I think that was in front of them, the senses and the smells that were there, which were all pleasant and very home-like. It was a smaller dining room. There was only, I think, 8 people in the dining room. And to her, she had dementia. I walked into her home.
Yes.
She didn't recognise me, but I was smiling, and there we had that moment of engagement. And she was comfortable enough and at home enough to go, please come and join me, you must be my guest. And I thought that was a really brilliant, interesting,
wonderful
first. And like also kind of a dial for me that turned over, and something I hadn't seen, that I had unconsciously been walking through dining room after dining room, never really noticing that stark engagement difference.
Yes.
And I think some of those softer things that we as professionals forget, you know, aged care dining generally will be, no matter where you are living, will be at 8 o'clock, which gives you the morning shift enough time to get breakfast on the table from the 6 o'clock shift. Then we'll have morning tea at 10, so we'll have some more bickies. Then we'll have lunch at 12. Then we'll have some afternoon tea at 2, and then we'll have our dinner at 4:35. And then we're put to get bed around 6. Curtains are drawn. And often there'll be supper. There'll be some sandwiches or some soup that might come around if somebody is hungry. But then there's this huge gap between the next meal. And it's time and time again, I think there's this unconscious bias where providers necessarily, everyone's on a thin dollar at the moment to try and make ends meet to keep the homes open.
Yes.
And then we have this gap in dining. Has Lutheran Services done some good work in that space around the shorter staff hours and what that might look like for a meal experience?
So, in fact, I think we've done good work, but the new standards will take us much further. So some people lean into change and some are helped along the way, and the new standards will help the whole industry along the way. So a rights-based approach to aged care should be an enforceable statement of rights. It just, when you say it out loud, the fact that we think otherwise, it's a bit embarrassing, is that the purpose of residential aged care, especially residential aged care, we'll talk about home care perhaps later, is that we work in people's homes so that they can continue to have the best possible quality of life and choice and control to the extent that they can. So there's an old saying is that it takes about 6 years to do a PhD. So they say, I don't have a PhD. So by the time you get to 80, you have, lots and lots of PhDs in your own life. I'm pretty much an expert of how I want my life to be at my stage in life. I can't imagine that changing. And so therefore it's a truism that says it should be about individual choice and control to the extent that that's possible. Now, I don't have complete control and choice in my life. I can't be taller or shorter or any of those things. I can't do everything I want. So there are some limitations, but it should be based around choice, not obligation. It should be curated around a person's experience. If I could use the comparison of childbirth, right? So I've been in the birthing suite a few times in my life, and I can remember certainly hearing about my siblings' birth was the nurses told my mother what she would do. Mm-hmm. And in fact, the deal in the hospital where she went was if she did well, they'd pass her a cigarette at the end, right? So this is giving you an idea about how old I might be. Whereas certainly with my older children, absolutely with my younger children, people were asked, the pregnant mother, the mother about to go into labour, was asked for her birth plan. Now, there was not a guarantee that it would go that way, but it was fundamentally seen as the woman and her supports, whoever that might be for her, the mother having the best human experience in birthing a child, rather than you are in a clinical. And so if we can use a metaphor of childbirth in aged care, this is about saying how do we provide superb supports to enable people to live quite different lives across a residential environment. That's why good built design, so coming back to Rose here, that's why good built design can really enhance the sense of living well, small home and all of those things, rather than the kind of quasi-hospital model. Now, We run a number of homes that look a bit like that because capital replacement is very difficult in the current market. So a rights-based approach and choice should not be for innovators. It should be for everyone. And come 1st November, it'll be for everyone.
Brilliant.
One of the things I most admire about you, Nick, is not only can you talk beautifully, but you also walk the talk.
Thank you.
One of the wonderful experience I got to experience when I was working with you was our immersion projects. And so that's where you ask your executive and your board members alike to sleep over. Could you tell us a little bit more about immersion?
In my case, I'm a CEO. I have a job where I go to meetings and I read spreadsheets. And clinical indicators and all of that stuff. And it's a really important part of the job. But it's got to be anchored in the lived experience. It's got to be anchored in the lived experience. Otherwise, it's an abstraction of an abstraction. So for immersion is going in to be present, to observe the experience of what it will be like in our residential aged care, because we do more than res care, we do home care, community services, etc. So wherever we deliver services, we go in and we are there to observe. We're not there to help. So we're there to go, what would it be like to live here or in a nursing home to spend my last days here? What would it be like to do that? And what would it be like to work here every single day? And we're not there to inspect, audit, monitor, report back. You disengage that kind of mindset to go, wow, what would it be like to live here, work here every single day? And some of the people that do immersion go, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to sit still, because we ask people to be there overnight in a residential aged care setting. And that means walking the corridor at 1 a.m. And sometimes if people don't know quite how to, because it's a bit kind of minimalist, the approach, is you can ask yourself 5 questions, if you like. What do I see, hear, smell, touch? And you sit there and you observe. And you smell and you touch the fabrics and you try to imagine what it would be like to live there for the rest of your life.
Would you like to share maybe some of your immersion experiences? Is there any particular moment where you were like, oh?
There was one, I was up at Cooinda, which is a beautiful nursing home in Gympie that we were blessed to become the new approved provider of some years ago, recently. And I had gone in, and at about 12 minutes to 5, the fire alarm went off.
In the morning or the afternoon?
No, in the morning.
In the morning.
And I wasn't up doing my Tai Chi quite that early. And so...
You're having your cold shower? Or
No, I think I was...
You CEOs.
That's right, I think I was dreaming at the time or something. So I was really interested to see how residents would cope with that. And what we tend to do in nursing homes is we tend to catastrophise, and we see vulnerability, which of course there is. But these were articulate, savvy people, community members, and of course it was a false alarm, and they suspected that. But of course I was highly alarmed, if you'll excuse the pun. So that was a real wake-up about how would we evacuate people effectively? So there was an insight. Another key insight was later that morning, I had breakfast with 293 years. So at my table, we added up, there was 293 combined years of living.
It's amazing, isn't it?
And so that... in terms of people being modern and contemporary, that is a reminder that we're here for a moment and that we rely upon the past, and no matter how innovative we are, the best that we do is often find, like a bowerbird, a shiny object from this model or that experience or that industry, and you shine it up and you place it in a new environment and you test whether that works. which has been my approach to innovation all of my professional life, is I don't think I've had too many really original ideas, but I know how to pick something, and I'm curious enough to work out why it might have worked there and how it could work in our environment. So that's the stuff that gives me encouragement. So immersion is about sitting and listening. One, I went to YJET, which is Youth Justice Education and Training for young people who don't participate in normal schooling very well. Either they're not suited for schooling or schools don't quite cater for them. It's somewhere between those two. And to sit there and to listen to a young woman, this is last year, up at Morayfield, and what she was telling me about cars and the cars that she rebuilt with her father and the pride she had was just wonderful to observe that. Who was a girl who would normally, or a young person, who would normally be described as a bunch of what she couldn't do. So her deficits, and I sometimes say this when I get up at conferences, I say, look, my name's Nick Ryan and I never played full forward for Hawthorn. Never. So the only important thing you need to know about me is I've never played full forward for Hawthorn. And just before you wonder where I played, I never played for Hawthorn at all. That's all you need to know about me, is what I can't do, what I haven't done. Now, I say that and it sounds silly. Our care industries can be based around people's deficits. Now, that's important from a duty of care and an obligation point of view, but I don't want to be defined by the fact that I never played full forward for Hawthorn.
You want to be defined for who you still are.
Well, and what I want to do, and my mother lived with cancer for 16 years. As she said, of the 10 things she wanted to talk about, cancer was number 19. You know what I mean? It was something, but it was by no means the most interesting thing, and it's not where she wanted to put her energy. So this is really about an approach to providing care that sees people as being individual, that tries to imagine it from the other side, that understands the needs for clinical structures and the right frameworks and compliance. But as I used to say when I'm the regulator, is if the only reason why you work in aged care is to comply, run away now. Go and find something that gives you joy. Do not come to work to just comply. Compliance is a ticket to ride. It's not where you go.
And in terms of, I guess, the need for change, we're all, every day, we're all getting closer to being a consumer ourselves of the sector.
You're a bit closer than
Thank you,
the rest
Dane.
of us, Rose.
Yes, Dane. Dane's the young one here. Nick, just in case you...
I wasn't sure, Rose, who was the younger of the two of you.
Thank you. It's hard to tell.
Flattery get you long run, Nick. Well done.
And you yourself, we could go through all of the things that you have done other than being full forward. But it's a long list. Long list of what you have done. If you could make one change tomorrow that the industry got on board with, accepted, became the hero of aged care, the change, what would be that change hero?
Within the industry?
Within the industry.
An industry is always a combination of different factors. It's fundamentally about the people it provides services for us. It's about the providers, and it's also about the regulators, the funders and the legislators. So I'm relatively rare because I've been both the regulator and the regulatee. And so we have needed to move through the Royal Commission period of review. I do like to remind the Commonwealth that under the PGPA Act, which regulates how government does its work, there's a thing called the Regulator Performance Framework for all regulatory systems. And it's about finding best practice regulation that certainly provides a very clear platform that no one should drop below. So there's no place and no excuse for bad providers, let alone abuse or neglect. But it should be moving towards in time a co-design model where people set and meet their own goals that obviously they have to pass the test to operate. If I could compare it to hospitals, hospital accreditation, if you're a hospital provider, you choose from a panel of regulators or assessors who measures you against the standards, and accreditation is an external validation of your own continuous improvement framework. So we do in time, as we settle into the new standards and the new Act, we need to go back to what is best practice regulation that frees and supports and validates providers who provide exceptional quality of care. So I have worked in aged care regulation, early childhood regulation, youth justice, and et cetera.
Everything except Hawthorn, really.
Well, indeed, yeah, I wasn't the football regulator. It's not true. So I would think that the best possible thing that can happen, other than there's a maturing in the relationship between the regulator and the industry. I look forward to that over the next 5 years. It's fundamentally that we can provide really different breakthrough approaches to quality of life, which is, as a frustrated architect, not only wasn't I full forward for Hawthorn, I never became an architect, but I have designed houses and other things, and I'm most interested in what great design looks like that enhances quality of life. I think for us it's going to be food and dining going forward. We're very proud of our nurse practitioner project. I want to really do much better social impact assessment in human services, so in our youth justice work or our mental health work. And so I think sometimes people go, well, we should be funded better, for example, and I go, I think we should, and the best way to do it, your two options are to complain about it or develop strong methodology and data and a case where the evidence speaks for itself. So I look forward to Lutheran Services and the industry as a whole maturing in the way we think about not just activity but improvements and outcomes, not just for ourselves and our residents, but how we participate in the broader health system, how we, in our community services, how our approaches to youth justice reduce recidivism for kids in the youth justice system, etc., etc. So it's a maturing from being just active in service delivery to being thought leaders based on evidence that can help co-design better human services going forward.
And in terms, I guess, of quality of life, and I greatly admire the strength that you've shown in the industry in that space and what you're doing with Happy Table. Would you mind touching on your thoughts around the 24/7 and the nurse and the care minute ratio?
Clearly, the move to 24/7 nursing is a vital step. The public expect a very high level of clinical care, and I have no concern with the fact that we attract and retain great RNs. I'll talk about nurse practitioners shortly, and we do receive better funding from the Commonwealth. I'm sorry, I'm tapping my microphone. We do receive better funding from the Commonwealth in terms of those care minutes. I think that it's a non-negotiable ticket to ride to have really excellent clinical care from the most qualified health professionals. It's not just nurse. It's just not RN minutes. It's also better allied health. And I think the Commonwealth have a little bit of work to do to see the crucial role that allied health play in terms of complementing, providing the right suite, the broad suite of supports, healthcare supports for our residents. I think that's a piece of work in action, and I understand that allied health providers do make themselves known to the Commonwealth. I wish them well. I will join in that voice.
Say it louder.
Nurse- sorry?
I said say it louder.
Well, it's important to,
Well, you're effectively paying for care out of your own pocket because you have to provide physiotherapy in our instance, but there's no direct tie to funding for it.
I think there's a real gap, and I love that we have a minimum expectation, right? And that we're making it really easy to understand what compliance can look like. What I find really difficult at the moment is that there's no avenue for an innovative provider to say, look, this is the mandatory care minutes. However, I have this great idea about improving the quality of my life of my residents, and here is how I need the right personnel to spend that funds, whether that's allied health, whether that's nurse practitioner, whether that's, creative engagement, which I know Lutheran Services also does very well, we're kind of one-sizing it, and we're at risk of we're putting so much obligations to comply that I've just paid all my money for that ticket, and I have no idea where I can go with the 2 cents I have left.
You've raised some really good points. I'll go back to my earlier comment that industry-wide change, which has been afoot now pretty well since Oakden, which was a awful healthcare facility in a suburb in Adelaide, was probably the precursor to the Patterson-Carnell review and then the Royal Commission all in time. The industry needed a major shake-up. We could debate the relative pros and cons of this review or that recommendation, but it is absolutely vital that the industry receive a shake-up, not just for what the industry does, but how government understands the significant rise in older Australians, the proportion of the Australian population, the average age of Australians goes up and up. We know that there'll be a rise in dementia, not just a rise in dementia on its own, but older Australians who 20 years ago would have passed away from heart disease or cancer. We have much better ways of keeping people alive and functioning so that perhaps underlying conditions might emerge. So I think it's important that we go through the regulatory review, the new Act. Pendulums tend to swing and they tend to balance. One of the great things about our model of government, and one of the great privileges of my life is having served as a public servant in the state and in the Commonwealth, is we have a system of government that tends to have inbuilt checks and balances. So if it goes out too far one way, time and circumstances, a parliament, ministers, the media and scrutiny tends to bring it back. And the pendulum has swung far in the aged care space. The government have set the new standards in the new Act. Time for every provider to get on board. And I think in time there will be a maturing of the industry and of the regulatory model.
I think it's a good time to come into governance is so important for that next. And a good segue into governance is how we met. We met on a plane back from Adelaide, and it was a time I was considering joining a volunteer community not-for-profit aged care provider.
And did I try to talk you out of it? Is that correct?
Tell me, what was your advice? Do you remember?
You got to be really careful about governance. Governance comes with obligations and liabilities and risk, especially on how you're incorporated. It takes real time, and you take on board particular duties. So there are certain responsibilities and obligations that are delegable, means I can delegate them. But certain things like occupational health and safety, and in our aged care space, there'll be a whole range of additional obligations that are non-delegable, which means if something goes wrong, I can't point to 3 rungs down the ladder. I just join everyone down to 3 rungs down the ladder. There is no creative hiding, as it were. So governance is one of the things I find most interesting from a former regulator point of view, from a current sitting governance on boards and councils as we speak today. In fact, I've got a school council meeting tonight here on the Gold Coast. And so governance is absolutely essential. And one of the things I was proud about in my quality agency days is there was not an explicit governance standard under the long-term previous standards. In fact, technically speaking, under the first set of standards that were there for over 20 years, providers weren't actually regulated in residential aged care. Homes were. So here on the Gold Coast, Lutheran Services was not accredited, but St Andrews at Talabudra was accredited. And so, of course, we all know that in organisations that have a group of services, that there is a culture and a set of standards and systems and tools, good, bad or otherwise, across the organisation. And I'm not just interested in service delivery, and this is neither is the current federal aged care regulator. They're interested in how the strategy, risk, profile, reputation, drill down, complaints and continuous improvement is held at a governance level. Because if there's no one at home up the top, you just hope that people manage to collude down the line to do good things.
The conversation we had at the time was around the risk that you hold as a director, and a significant portion of our industry is the board is filled with volunteer board members like Rose and I. So I think that it was a few years ago, but I think the advice at the time was that you have to be very careful as a volunteer board member taking on the level of up to criminal responsibility for things that can go wrong.
In some cases, there are criminal sanctions for breaches. So the Corporations Act, and read ASIC's annual report, where you read them, and I tend to have two responses. I go, and my other response is, whew. So that's such some bad things that happen, and whew, that it hasn't happened in my piece of the world. I think governance, especially in aged care, so in our case, where we're changing our legal structure, it's a bit geeky, so I won't go into the details, but we will be, Lutheran Services will be a trust that has a company where the directors are trustees of the trust. It has governance obligations under the Australian Charities and Not-for-Profit Commission, the governance standards, which are pretty good standards. As a charity, someone who's worked in charity a long time, I think they're quite explicit and useful. There's the Corporations Act. Some of the Corporations Act obligations are picked up in the ACNC governance standards. They're kind of switched off a bit, but not all of them. There's the Aged Care Act. There's the Aged Care Standards. There's state work, health and safety obligations, and on it goes. And so we're a heavily governed society, and no one is more governed, has more regulatory oversight, I would argue, at this stage than residential aged care.
So how do we keep great people interested in an industry that's more and more in demand in the future with our demographics? How do we keep these community organisations with a skill-based board, which is now a requirement? So what changes can we make to attract and retain good people?
You might not like my answer. The days of small standalone not-for-profits, small community-based aged care providers are numbered. And this is not a acquisition policy of mine or a strategy or a seek to take it over. Is in order to be able to competently ensure that you have the right systems, the right risk profile, the right complaints, the right financial HR scheduling, rostering, is a significant piece of work that a standalone provider, some standalone providers will be able to continue, or small groups of home will be able to continue, but the rationalisation in the industry goes on and on. I haven't seen any figures this year, but last year, every week or fortnight, a small aged care a RAC ID number, the approved provider was passed, either ceased to exist or it was taken over or transitioned to a bigger group. And I think that there is a degree of inevitability with that. I am not arguing for it. I'm not barracking for it, but I am saying this is what would happen. And so the consolidation of smaller businesses that cannot compete and do not have the corporate capability, this is the new regulatory environment. Can I mention one of the things that we are interested in doing in Lutheran Services is we've spent the last couple of years building an ERP, a consolidated set of HR, IT, finance. We've added rostering and scheduling. We're just going through that process now. That provides very low levels of human contact in the way we roster, schedule, do accounts payable, receivable, have the account for the resident or the client. And one of the things that Lutheran Services wants to do is if you've got a small standalone facility, we would love to sell at a reasonable price back of house services for them. So they can focus on governance, clinical care, their own signature offerings. So I think that there is a case for saying, if we were running, let's say that the three of us were running a small residential aged care service in Charters Towers. I can't remember the name of the one in Charters Towers, so I don't want to compete with them, but we're imagining we're the only one in Charters Towers. We could probably do great front face-to-face service delivery. Rose is here, so our built environment would be Schmick.
We're looking Schmick.
Schmick.
Our allied health services are sorted.
The physio.
Of course.
The physio. Any maths questions we've got covered.
We've got, well,
Got a calculator.
by the way, there are three kinds of people in this world: those who can count and those that can't. So the whole, but it'd be hard to do all of that. Plus do clinical software and et cetera, et cetera. And so one of the things in terms of, I think, a hybrid or a transition opportunities is one of the sad things about this transition, the consolidation in the industry, is that distinct local models of care with a wonderful story can be lost. It's sometimes just a way of life, but I think it's sad. And one of the things I'm most proud of Lutheran Services, except for a small handful of services, all the services we run were started by local congregations, or in the case of Corinda at Gympie, was a local community-based organisation who good, generous local people, be it in the community or in a Lutheran congregation, worked, volunteered, sold lamingtons, did sausage sizzles, collected bottles, volunteered, builders worked on a Saturday for nothing to help build it. Now that social capital model is the heart and soul of not just good aged care or disability services or footy ovals or that stuff. It's the glue. It's social capital is the sense, the stickiness that holds us all together. Now, we see ourselves as custodians and stewards and trustees, not just legally in our case shortly, but culturally, of the good services. So we don't buy into, we're so shiny, before us there was nothing. But thank goodness we've arrived, because we just do it better than everyone, is the better I understand the vision and the story and the narrative and the names and the whole thing of how all of our services developed, is we didn't invent them, we inherited them. So in order to understand, if you were to look at it in terms of DNA, where did this species come from and where might it be going in the future? So consolidation is unavoidable. There are some interim approaches. I would hope that there could be a strong future for small standalone providers. In our case, we're very clear that we need to get to a particular size to feel that we're viable going forward. Once you've got your model of once you've got your ERP, your back of house, and a really strong, distinctive model of care and services, you can scale quickly. And that will be the future of our organisation. But you don't scale hoping to get a good model of care. You develop a really strong model of care, and that way you have a basis for scaling.
I am, as a board member of a standalone organisation in a thin market,
Yes.
I do fear, I guess, in terms of the responsibility of me as a board member being a steward of that legacy.
Yeah.
And
I think that'll be confronting that consolidation of community-based providers into larger organisations. I think that will be confronting for a lot of people,
like,
even if it is inevitable.
and that trust,
Agreed.
like, you know, whilst Lutheran Services has the DNA of already doing that. That's where Lutheran Services came from, the amalgamation of smaller entities. There are, you know, will other organisations that perhaps may be interested in inquiring me, if me being the organisation, will they be as faithful stewards of that legacy, and what could it possibly mean for regional towns if the government, when they're looking at that consolidation.
Especially the more regional you get, right? That's
So I did briefly work with in a transition role with Southern Cross Care. So Jason Eldering and his team at Southern Cross Care do outstanding work out past Dalby and Miles and places like that. So they are unequivocally committed to providing great residential aged care on the Western Darling Downs. And so one of the things, and I would say the same thing about Uniting Care, so they run ARCs. Without ARCs in the Northern Territory and Western Australia, there wouldn't be Indigenous residential aged care. It just wouldn't be there. And so one of the things that not-for-profits, faith-based not-for-profits, there are other not-for-profits that don't have a religious frame, but certainly the not-for-profits, and particularly in the case of religious not-for-profits, there is a missional, not just a return on investment, there's a sense of missional imperative. And by the way, I am not opposed to for-profit providers at all. I've listened to the debates, I've probably added to the debates over the last 20 years or so around, I think the vast majority of aged care providers that I've encountered provide really good quality of care, and they're there for the right reasons. There's just different financial. There is a different purpose, and the mission-based gives us a distinctive approach. We're very proudly a Lutheran organisation, so we draw heavily on the experience of a Lutheran church, especially in the Queensland district where we operate. So the narrative, the quality of care, the sense of mission, volunteering, sacrifice is distinctive to us. And so for us, being the best we can be is our opportunity and our challenge. There is a risk though, and it's hard. And, you've got a small community-based not-for-profit aged care facility. The risk is when it gets passed over, it will be diluted. Maybe that's the way of life. But leadership and governance can be intentional about really drawing in to understand that, to draw from it and to honour it and to respect it. And mature corporate governance, mature leadership doesn't buy into, well, thank goodness I'm here. It's how lucky am I to have inherited.
So congratulations, Nick. Tomorrow,
Yes.
we've actually organised for you to move into an aged care home.
Yes.
it's your turn now.
It's your turn.
Yes.
In this final minute of our interview with you, is there anything we need to know about what you might need in your new home?
Well, like most people who go into residential aged care, it can happen following a stroke or a fall. So most of us think it's still coming yet. So now that I'm there, now that I'm about to move in, is there anything that they need to know about me? The first thing that I'd like to do is just to meet them, the people look after me. I particularly want to meet my neighbours. I'd want to meet people and say hello. I'd hope that they're interested in me. I'd hope they'd ask me, what would you like to be called? Is it Nicholas? My legal name is Nicholas. Is it Mr. Ryan? Is it mate or buddy or Nicky? It's never been Nicky, except when I've been in trouble. Is it Nicky? And so I would hope that people would take the time, because I don't quite know what I need to tell them yet, because I'd have to encounter that on the journey. So I hope they're committed to listening and dialogue, and not just do I want the custard or the ice cream for dessert.
Thank you, Nick. I hope it was time well spent.
This has been time well spent. I think it's been time well spent for your listeners and your viewers as well.
That's a wrap for today's episode. Make sure you subscribe or click follow. If you want to continue this conversation or share your thoughts on today's interview, we'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn. I'm Dane Mitchell.
And I'm Rose Plater.
We'll put the links in the show notes. I hope this was time well spent. Thanks for listening to this episode.
If this was time well spent for you, follow the podcast so you never miss an episode.
If you want to support us, leave a review and share it with someone in your network who might get value from it.
Finally, a thanks to our partners who make this possible. Painters, your design and construction partner.
And Optum Allied Health, your physiotherapy and allied health partner. You can find the links in the show notes.
Thank you for listening. We'll see you on the next episode.